put on my healthcare rising hat. So the Stop Surprise Billing and Protect Patients Act 2 is subject to litigation on the signatures and the 100-word summary. Similarly to Second Chance's, feeling good about the rate that those signatures are being rehabbed, and actually received a notice from the Secretary of State today that our appeal there has gone over well, and if we survive our legal challenges, we have enough signatures to qualify for the ballot and will be on the ballot. But that's a big lift, and we're still doing that in the courts. The act does four basic things. It protects Arizona's against surprise medical bills from out-of-network providers, ambulance services, emergency cases, and requires refunds if patients are overcharged. That we had a question about whether you as the patient have to petition your insurance company or the doctor, and that should not be the impact. The onus is upon the doctor and the insurer to automatically provide you with a reimbursement if you're overcharged for a service because it was out of network. Second, it protects patient safety by requiring private hospitals to meet national safety standards regarding hospital-acquired infections, and gives the State Department of Health Services the authority to impose civil penalties if the hospitals fail to meet those standards. Third, it helps build a highly skilled and stable healthcare workforce. As many of you may know, we have a massive shortage and are facing an even greater one through this pandemic, but already because of the low pay. So we're giving direct care hospital workers a 5% wage increase each year for 4 years. And lastly, and most, I think, very importantly, it bans discrimination against patients based on pre-existing conditions. So people in Arizona can get the life-saving care they need, and insurance companies cannot deny coverage or charge outrageous rates for people with pre-existing conditions. This becomes especially important in light of any litigation around the Affordable Care Act, which we just got a notice that after the general election this year will be at the Supreme Court. That one is much shorter. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay. Does anyone have questions for David, who politely waited throughout my entire presentation?
Oh, it looks like there is something for David from Randy. Randy, you can just ask your question, but yeah, open it up. Anybody has questions about any of these? My only question was, I thought that maybe they might go for a single subject on the healthcare rising, because there seems like a lot of subjects, but I guess they didn't challenge that part.
I don't know if initiatives have that. Do initiatives have that restriction? I don't know.
Sorry, what was the question? Single subject?
Single
No.
subject.
We are not subject to single subject.
And I can answer Randy's question about Ledge Council. We actually have had 2 victories in the courts in the last few days. So Randy's question refers to the Legislative Council drafts a summary of the description that goes into the voter guide that all voters get. And they are notorious for always writing these legislative summaries in a very biased manner. And they did again for InvestInEd. I think they did for pretty much all of the 4 initiatives. And InvestInEd challenged the way they wrote the ballot initiative. And so we challenged that to a separate judge in the lower court, and we won. Basically, what their summary said was it referred to that the InvestInEd tax would tax typically small businesses, which is totally false. And then it also said that it would amount to a 77% tax increase, which was also totally false. The lower court said that that language was biased and had to be taken out. And Legislative Council met this afternoon, and they did take out both of those things. So we are happy with the language. It's still, it's not perfect, but it's much better. And it was nice to have that victory as well today. And so, yes, that was taken care of by Legislative Council today.
And there's no appeal to the Supreme Court on that lower court one?
Nope. Well, they could, but they ran out of time, so there is no time to do it. Basically, what they said is they're sending it directly. It's already in the Secretary of State's hands, and she's doing that. I should also say that Representative Freeze, I think you're on this committee, right? So they also put in some language relating to the Voter Protection Act On all 4 of the ballot initiatives, they try to tack on unnecessary language saying that if these pass, that the legislature couldn't make changes, and basically just reiterating what's in the Voter Protection Act already. And the court also, we challenged that language as well, and the court agreed with us, and so they also had to make changes to that language as well.
Just to drill it down to an even further nuance, I believe there's still another hurdle, and that is the Attorney General can make changes to the SOS's language, but he must send it back to her for remedy or something. So that's still one more hurdle in front of us.
Right. So yeah, that's the actual ballot language. So the one in Ledge Council, it goes in the voter pamphlet that all voters get, and then the one you're talking about is the actual language that goes on the ballot. And so the AG have reviewed the Secretary of State's language for that for Invest in Ed, and we are still working with them. So far, that language looks pretty good, but there's a couple of changes we're still lobbying for. But we are hopeful that that language will be pretty good as well.
Just want to sing the Democrats, House Democrats praises, and the Senate Democrats as well. That Ledge Council hearing in July, in advance of the litigation around the Ledge Council publicity pamphlet summaries, I think the line of questioning and the statements made it abundantly clear that it was being politicized and inappropriately used. And without that advocacy and without all of you there, I don't. Oh, hello. No worries. I have one too. I'm surprised it hasn't happened. But without that advocacy, I don't think we would have had the same outcomes we have been enjoying. So really, really want to make sure I thank you guys for that.
So if we don't have any more questions, I guess we'll, Freeze and I will kind of wrap it up a little bit. We do have a volunteer. Danielle has volunteered to help you with those signatures, going through those signatures. So yes, I mean, and there might be other people who want to help. And if they all get on the ballot, summaries of all of them, 4 of us would be good, because we're promoting these, for the most part. And so it's good to have you guys here. I really appreciate your time and so excited about Invested Ed and keeping our fingers crossed for the others. And so we want to get off the phone in case you guys want to watch the Democratic National Convention. Jim and I have been watching it. We actually kind of like it, we like the videos. Want to just remind you that we are also running for re-election this year, and we have websites and we're looking for volunteers. I don't want to give this a hard sell, but that we are looking for volunteers, and we plan to crush our Republican opponent, but we still need ground support to do that. So if there's anything you want to say, Dr. Freeze?
Yes. Thanks, Pam. I also want to acknowledge Susan and what she's done with LD9 and organizing us in each election, and our volunteers. And LD9's turnout is always very, very high in the state. So yes, campaigning and walking will be very different this year. We're going to focus on literature drops, right? So unfortunately, not a lot of face-to-face contact, but we do need to get our literature out there to make sure people know who we are, remember who we are. And, we would really appreciate the volunteer support that we've gotten in the past, and we really appreciate the help this time to get, people refamiliarize themselves with Pam and I and what we're doing and how we represent the district as a good team. I always tell Pam, I think she and I are a good team for LD9. We overlap some, and we have separate, pieces on others, so it's a good representation for our district.
I was going to say, AJ put her phone number down there, but if you want to volunteer for either of us, text or call AJ, or AJ, maybe put your email in there. And because we're going to be working together, we might be working with some of the school board candidates also, but we haven't really formalized things. And so we're going to work collaboratively like we did in the past. So anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Oh, Paul? Paul has his hand up.
If I may. So on Invest in Ed, what do we think that our Republican opposition is going to do? How are they going to use that in their elections in November? How's that going to change conversations for us?
I guess I missed that, Paul.
Go ahead, Ray.
I'm sorry, I missed your, how is what going to change conversations?
So,
Or was that for David? I'm sorry.
presumably Invest in Ed being on the ballot is going to influence our Republican opponents in our November elections. How do you guys think this is going to change the conversations we're going to have with voters about that in terms of framing our conversations?
I actually think it makes it easier for Democrats to frame the message about, we have seen 3 decades of disinvesting in our public schools, and you have not seen the Republicans come up with any plans for 3 years. So this is why voters need to finally take matters into their own hands and provide the funding that our public schools need. I think you can also use this as an opportunity because their side is going to be that this is going to hurt businesses. It's going to drive people out of the state. And I think it's an opportunity to say, the top 1% who will be impacted by this are the ones who have benefited by 3 decades of tax cuts in Arizona and have created a really unfair tax code. And so this is an opportunity to not only create a fair tax code for our state, but to provide the investments that our schools really need.
And Paul, I think this is, there's going to be a huge Democratic turnout. We saw the primary was, unprecedented and a way increased Democratic turnout, a way suppressed Republican turnout. One of the talking points I use is that this is a progressive way to tax people. This is not a sales tax. This is something that is coming through and the legislature cannot touch it, change it, redirect it, redivert it. So it's very important for people to understand how this directed funding source is going to help our schools. And these are the talking points that and I think it's going to excite people and get them out there to get their ballots by mail and fill them out and get them back and participate.
Yeah, I agree that Invest in Ed will help us out. I think all the initiatives would help us out. And there was one theory going on that the Republicans had such a low turnout in the primary because they didn't necessarily trust the vote by mail, but then they didn't want to go to the polls either, or maybe they didn't like who their choices were, hopefully. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But we so much appreciate the support from the PCs. We can see how much you guys have done, since 2016, especially with, pumping up the registration and bringing in more PCs. And so, we're at a much better place with our breakdown in our LD than we were 4 or 5 years ago because of all the hard work that PCs have done. So we really appreciate it. And, we've only got, a few more weeks, thank goodness. So I think unless anybody's got anything else to say, I think we'll call it quits for tonight. If that's okay with you guys. Okay, well, as usual, I'll put this up on YouTube so people can see it later. And we'll be looking for handouts for all 4 ballot initiatives on the ballot, right? So we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.